This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is a fantastic platform for building a website. Go check them out at the link down in the description, but for now, let's get into the video. Commander is a strange game, because it wasn't made like the rest of Magic. There was no design team that carefully crafted its intricacies. Instead, some guy had an idea for his own way to play Magic, and then told his friends, who told their friends. And along the way, the rules molded themselves into today's shape. This is of course a gross oversimplification, but I'm not trying to do a deep dive on this right now. If you're interested in a more detailed look, go check out our 50-minute long video on the subject matter. Interestingly, the starting point of this journey was specifically built to resist how Magic worked. Players started with 100 life and 100 card singleton decks, leading to long, inconsistent games full of unpredictable variety. But then, eventually, Wizards started designing cards specifically for Commander. The rules were designed to not work with Magic, and then Magic was designed to work with those new rules. This has all led to some clunkiness within Commander, and so today I would like to engage in a bit of a thought experiment and suggest 3 rule changes that I think would improve the format. Now, I'm under no illusion that I think any of these changes would ever actually be implemented, but Commander is basically a mod of Magic, and there's no reason why we wouldn't be able to just keep modding it. We can make up our own rules and play with them, and I think that's beautiful. So, here are mine. I'm going to start with the one I'm least passionate about and then move my way up, although to be honest, I think all 3 of them are kind of even. Anyways, structure. So, my first rule change is actually about the physicality and logistics of Commander instead of its gameplay. I think 100 card decks are too big. It's too many physical cards, which makes Commander decks unwieldy and difficult to shuffle. I've encountered many players that struggle with shuffling their decks, and I know that some of you will listen to this and say, yeah, that's why I don't like fetch lands, that's why I don't like tutors, because then I have to shuffle my deck. Others, however, will impulsively dismiss this issue. But to you I say, consider that some people, particularly women, just have smaller hands. My wife really struggles to shuffle her Commander decks, and often just has me do it instead. Her hands are small, and 100 cards is a lot of cards. Again, this is an issue of pure physicality. And that's not even talking about double sleeving. Commander is an eternal format, and many players enjoy playing with expensive cards, whether they be old or new. To protect their valuable collectibles, some players double sleeve either their entire deck or at least portions of it. A double-sleeved Commander deck is unwieldy beyond reason. I can't shuffle that in one go either. So, I think we should reduce the deck size to 80. I understand that the idea of 100 card decks was to introduce a lot of variety, and I agree that that's a great idea and I want to maintain that. But I also feel that we would still have it with 80 card decks. 80 cards is still quite a lot in a singleton format, and it would be much easier to handle. This right here is a regular Commander deck, 100 cards, and yeah, it's just kind of a little bit too big, I feel. Well, this right here, 80 cards. Oh, this feels good. Like I can actually wrap my hand around it properly. Like I can't do that here. My hand is too small. And I think that just kind of makes this feel a lot better. And honestly, it's not gonna make that much of a difference. Sure, maybe some of the repeat cards that exist would feel even more repeated, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I think we already have enough iterations of the cards that we see multiple copies of that wouldn't really make much of a difference. This is unfortunately one of these changes that's a bit more difficult to implement because of course you gotta convince people to start building 80 card decks, but you know, gotta bring it up anyways. If you've enjoyed the video so far, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and check out today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is a service that lets you build websites. Everything regarding a website can be done on Squarespace. You can run your store on Squarespace, you can get your domain on Squarespace. Anything you need is available on Squarespace. And that's something I really enjoy about it. It's one platform that has everything handled for you. But of course, if you want to customize things, then you can do that too. It's both accessible for beginners and for people that already know what they are doing. You have the freedom to make your own decisions, and that's something that I very much appreciate. So go check out Squarespace at the link down in the description, get yourself a professionally built website or make a disaster yourself. The choice is yours. Link down below, and for now, let's continue. Commander isn't a very balanced game. I don't think I have to elaborate on this point, as it's fairly obvious to anybody who has ever played it. Combo is overwhelmingly the best strategy to win, which is why it's so popular in competitive matches. 40 life per player is just a huge amount to get through. Normal Magic is designed for 20 life, so there are a lot of cards that are great in 1 versus 1 formats that just can't work in Commander because their damage output is too low. Particularly Red suffers from this, as its aggressive burn strategies aren't even remotely viable. And I should make clear here that I don't just mean CEDH. I'm talking about Commander as a whole. Commander is notorious for having players only ramping and building engines during the early game, while simply soaking any damage that comes at them, because they know that it's ultimately not enough damage to truly impact them. That then leads to other players following suit, creating our common environment of mid-game value engines that just try to outrun each other without engaging too much. Commentators that complain about this often place the blame on the players, but in reality, the gameplay incentives are built in such a way to enable and encourage this strategy. If you have 40 life, you really don't need to worry about taking 2, 3, 5, 10 damage during the early game. You're still very healthy. Commander games also have a tendency to go long, often 90 minutes or even more. Now, I don't have a problem with long games, but I feel like 90 minutes should be our upper cap, and 60 to 75 is probably a better normal. Considering that, I think Commander would be better at 30 starting life instead of 40. I've already tried this a couple of times, and every game has felt much more dynamic and natural than usual Commander, because there's no longer this huge buffer you have to work through before life points actually matter. Playing aggressively becomes much more viable, and that's something I enjoy, although I know that you can still build aggro decks in usual Commander, but I feel like those are very restricted to certain specific cards, and if you have to play O'Hare to be able to burn people out, is it really a burn deck or is it an O'Hare deck? You get what I mean, right? Now, I'll concede there's definitely a good amount of personal preference involved here, but I do think that reducing the starting life total would increase the range of viable strategies while nerfing some of the currently best ones. But there's a problem that would come along with this change, which is that Wizards design some cards to be able to work their way through the massive 40 life, and those would become a bit broken. Looking at you there, Yuriko. But I would be okay with accepting that, as I feel the upsides outweigh the negatives. And honestly, Yuriko is already broken, so And finally, let's talk about the final player. Going last in Commander can feel terrible. If player 1 has a great start, dropping soul rings and other ramp spells quickly, and you're 4th and just have to go land pass, it sometimes feels like there's no point to even playing. Going first is a big advantage in Magic, which is why other formats give the player going second a helping hand by letting only the second player draw a card on the first turn. Now, Commander is a bit different of course, because we have 4 players. We could come up with a system that cascades advantages past the first player, giving the second a small advantage, the third a bit more, and the fourth the most, but I think that'd be clunky and rules heavy, so I want to avoid that. While going third is of course still worse than first, it doesn't quite feel as horrible as playing 4th. So, to keep things simple, I'm going to focus on only giving the player going last a small advantage. A common suggestion here is to let the player going last scry for 1 or 2. But I don't really like this solution, because it doesn't address the actual problem. Being fourth is a mana disadvantage. On turn 2, the player going first gets to use 2 mana to respond to the 1 mana plays of their opponents, while the player going last has to face 2 mana plays with also 2 mana. And this rhythm persists for the rest of the game. They never get an opportunity to take the mana initiative and make a bigger play than their opponents had a chance to. So my suggestion here is that the player going last starts the game with a treasure token in play. This way they get to go first once per game. This solution also only uses game pieces that everybody is already familiar with, which is important because it makes this rule very easy to implement. So to sum it up, first I would change the commander deck sizes to be 80 instead of 100. Second, I would change starting life total to be 30 instead of 40. And third, I would give the player going last a free treasure at the start of the game. I think these changes would make Commander more balanced, more interesting, and less unwieldy. I don't know, 100 cards is just so many. I am very interested to hear what you guys think though. Do you think I'm insane? Do you think these changes would make the game worse? Though I want to say, before you get too critical, maybe try them. Admittedly, the 80 card thing is a bit more difficult to try, so maybe don't try that, but just play some games with a free treasure at the start of the game for the last player and try out what it feels like to actually have only 30 starting life instead of 40. I think you would be pleasantly surprised. Always keep in mind the most important aspect of game design, by far, and it's not even close, is playtesting. It's all about playtesting. You need to test, you need to test, you need to test. Because sometimes you think you understand how things are gonna work out in practice and you're so far off it's not even funny. So give it a try. And if you do, let me know what changes you would implement. I'm very curious about your suggestions. I'm sure you have your own home rules or, home rule thoughts, something that you want to share. I would be delighted to hear it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Would definitely appreciate that. And I'll see you soon. I lied. There is a fourth rule that we should change. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Fix it. Change commander damage, you cowards. Goodbye.